Okay, so ready to dive in? Today, we're taking a look at indie games. You know, those games that come from outside the big studios, often full of those really unique ideas.
Right. Yeah.
Like, if you ever played a game and thought, wow, I didn't see that coming, whether it's the story, the art style, or even how you play it, that's what we're looking for in the indie scene.
Definitely.
And we've gathered some super interesting perspectives today to really understand what it takes to not just make an indie game, but to actually thrive in that world.
Yeah, that's a big one. Thriving is the key word there.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting scene because it's all about that raw creativity that so many players just love.
For sure.
You often see developers, sometimes even just one person, exploring really personal themes or experimenting with artistic styles in a way that those big AAA studios, the ones with huge budgets, wouldn't even think of doing. It's a space where individual passion really shines.
Totally. So, like, if you've ever had that little itch to create a game, to make your idea a reality, the big question we're tackling today is this. What happens when someone tries to break into the indie game development world? You know, the actual steps they take, the challenges they face, and the drive they need to make their mark.
Definitely. And to really grasp what's happening today, it helps to understand how the indie scene got to where it is. I think the early 2000s were a huge turning point.
Yeah.
What were some of the big changes that drove that momentum?
Well, let's see. The rise of those digital distribution platforms, things like Steam and the Apple App Store, that was a major turning point. It was a game changer.
Absolutely.
Suddenly, these developers, small teams, or even individuals had a way to get their games directly to you, the player. No more going through those big publishers.
Right. They could finally bypass that.
It really leveled the playing field.
Yeah, exactly. Back in the day, the only way to get your game out there was to convince a publisher to invest in it. But digital distribution, that totally changed the game. It meant you could get your game in front of players without that gatekeeper.
And it's fascinating how that shift empowered individual creators to really connect with their audience directly.
For sure.
And it wasn't just about getting the games out there, right? It was about proving that these smaller projects, fueled by passion, could actually be successful. That's where games like Braid, made by Jonathan Blow, the one where you can rewind time, not just to fix mistakes, but to solve puzzles.
That's such a cool mechanic.
Or Super Meat Boy from Team Meat, a super hard platformer with a pretty simple idea that just blew up.
Yeah.
These games weren't just little experiments. They got rave reviews and, importantly, made a real impact commercially.
Absolutely. They really proved that point.
They showed everyone that indie games weren't just some niche thing. They had real potential.
Totally. For example, with Braid, you really saw the artistic side of indie games. It showed how innovative mechanics could actually tell a deeper, more meaningful story.
I see what you mean.
And Super Meat Boy, well, it showed that even if a game is crazy difficult, it can still find a huge and loyal audience.
For sure.
These games became like these inspirational figures. They showed aspiring developers that commercial success and critical acclaim were within reach, even for small teams. If they could do it, why not others?
And it feels like beyond just the games themselves, there are some legendary figures in the indie world who really embody what independent creation is all about.
Totally.
People like Phil Fish, the creator of Fez.
Oh, such a visually stunning game.
Right, with those mind-bending puzzles. Or Genova Chen, who gave us the incredibly emotional and minimalist Journey.
Yeah.
Those creators really stand out.
What's really interesting about people like Phil Fish and Genova Chen is that their games feel so personal, almost like they're directly expressing their own artistic vision. You know? They weren't following trends. They were driven by what they wanted to create, to make something truly meaningful. And their journeys weren't easy. They faced a lot of challenges along the way. But the games they created really resonated with players. They showed just how much passion and dedication goes into indie games.
Absolutely. So let's say someone's listening, they've got that spark of an idea, and they want to make their own game. Where do they even start? What advice can we give them based on what we've learned?
Well, one thing that comes up over and over again is start small. It's tempting to dream big. Think about massive open worlds, RPGs, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it's easy to get carried away.
Exactly. But for someone just starting out, that kind of ambition can lead to burnout and ultimately to an unfinished game. What's interesting is that so many successful indie developers began with much smaller ideas. They focused on one cool gameplay mechanic or a short but impactful story.
So, like, master the basics before tackling a masterpiece.
Right. It's like learning your scales before trying to compose a symphony. And it proves you don't need a massive team or a ton of money to get started.
That makes sense. And it seems like connecting with potential players early on is crucial. Building a community around your game is super important.
Absolutely. When you're an indie developer, you usually don't have a big marketing budget. So building a community becomes even more important. Platforms like Discord, Reddit, Twitter, those are great places for developers to share their progress, ask for feedback, and get people excited about the game, even while it's still being made.
Yeah, those platforms can be super helpful.
This direct connection is invaluable. You're not just making a game in a vacuum, you know. You're building something with an audience in mind, getting real-time reactions and suggestions that can really shape the final product.
Totally. And it's not just about the gameplay or the visuals, is it?
Mm,
Our sources really highlight the power of a unique story to make an indie game stand out.
definitely. I think what sets many indie games apart is their willingness to take risks with the story.
I see what you mean.
They explore themes and perspectives you might not see in more mainstream games. And because they often have more creative freedom, indie developers can push the boundaries with their storytelling. They can create games that are deeply personal, emotionally powerful, and stay with you long after you finish playing.
Yeah, those are the games that stick with you.
Exactly. And I think that's what really resonates with players.
Now, of course, money is a huge hurdle for indie developers. And we keep seeing crowdfunding platforms come up as a way to overcome this.
Oh, for sure. Platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo have been revolutionary for indie development.
In what way?
Well, they give developers a direct way to pitch their ideas to the public and get funding based on community interest and support. It's really democratized the whole funding process. Instead of relying solely on those traditional investors, developers can turn to passionate players who believe in their vision.
It's almost like a community effort to get the game made.
Yeah, exactly. And a successful crowdfunding campaign doesn't just provide much needed money, it also builds a dedicated fan base right from the start.
That's a great point. And it also sounds like being actively involved in the game dev community and networking with industry professionals is super important.
It's absolutely essential. Going to gaming conferences, those indie showcases, they're not just about showing off your game. They're about connecting with other developers, publishers, even potential collaborators. You never know who you'll meet or where a conversation might lead.
That's true. You could meet your next partner there.
Exactly. And even if you don't, you're learning, sharing ideas, and opening doors to new opportunities that you wouldn't find otherwise. These connections are crucial for bringing new and exciting games to players.
Totally. Now, beyond the practical stuff, our sources also touch on some more um, conceptual or maybe even philosophical ideas for aspiring indie developers. One that stood out was viewing failure as a learning experience.
Yeah, that's a big one. Making games, just like any creative process, is all about trying things out. Not every idea will work, and things won't always go as planned.
Yeah, there are going to be bumps in the road.
Absolutely. Embracing failure, not as a setback, but as a chance to learn, is key to growing and improving.
Failure is just part of the process.
It really is. Every prototype you abandon, every technical problem you can't solve, they all teach you something valuable that you can use in your next project.
Like stepping stones, right?
Exactly. And this mindset isn't just for game development, it's helpful for anything where you need to be creative and innovative.
That's a really great point. And another idea that's presented is being willing to experiment with new technologies.
Oh yeah, for sure. The gaming world is constantly evolving. There are always new technologies popping up, things like VR, AR, even blockchain applications that offer incredibly exciting new ways to create games and player experiences.
It's moving so fast.
It really is.
Yeah.
And by experimenting with these cutting-edge technologies, indie developers can carve out their own space and create truly unique games that haven't been seen before.
It's almost like they're shaping the future of gaming.
In a way, they are. These are the kinds of developments that could really change how you play games in the future.
We always love to share a fun fact that really shows the potential of the indie scene. And the story behind Minecraft is just incredible.
Oh yeah. Can you believe Minecraft, that global phenomenon, a game played by millions, started as an indie side project?
Mind-blowing.
And get this, it was initially created by Marcus Persson in just 6 days.
6 days.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? A game that's gone on to be one of the best-selling games of all time, made in less than a week. It just shows you the amazing potential within the indie scene. A simple idea, well executed and resonating with players, can lead to incredible success.
It really can. So to wrap this all up for you, what would you say is the most important thing we've learned from our deep dive into indie games?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. To succeed in the indie game world, you need a powerful combination of creative vision, that initial spark of a unique idea, unwavering determination, and a resourceful approach to every aspect of development. That means everything from finding the money to make your game to building a supportive community around it.
Yeah, it takes a lot of hard work and dedication.
It does. But the journey, even with all its challenges and surprises, is ultimately incredibly rewarding. You have the potential to create something truly special, something the players, maybe even you listening, will discover and love. That's what makes it all worthwhile.
Absolutely. So today we've looked at how indie games rose to prominence, the essential advice for anyone thinking about jumping into indie game development, and the incredible potential that exists in this space, with Minecraft being a prime example.
Right, and I think about this. The indie game scene thrives because it encourages those unique artistic visions and builds those direct connections with players. What other industries, even ones outside entertainment, could learn from this approach?
That's an interesting question.
It really makes you wonder where else this kind of thinking, encouraging creativity and fostering strong communities, could lead to innovation and strong relationships.
Really gets you thinking, doesn't it?
It does.
And that's it for our deep dive into indie games.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thanks for joining us.